bring on Attorney Tom Fisher to the show. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
I guess with the press conference, they're very engaging, but can we just go back a little bit, Tom, and tell us how this went from zero to I'm going to sue?
I'm sorry?
So just tell us how did you it end up you end up filing something? Just take us to the beginning, if you could.
Okay, I think well, the issue's always been out there, but the origin of it was that horrendous conference that took place at Adelup between the governor and GFT and I guess some of the senators. I mean, it was clear on the face of it that these employees with GovGuam were getting ready to take it in the neck, and that was the origin of it. And you're exactly right; it went from 0 to 60. Had to get in front of it.
So it had been brewing for a while. I'm sure you kind of had your eye on this, Tom, since the beginning of the pandemic. When it became clear after 2, 3, 4 weeks after those first couple paychecks that the double pay, the mandated double pay, wasn't going to be paid. Were you kind of sitting there? I mean, because I know you've been around for other disasters. Were you kind of sitting there scratching your head, wondering why this wasn't made into a bigger deal earlier?
No, I can't say that I was, because we have the right to expect the government will act in good faith. Everybody's been a little bit sideways during this COVID thing. Everybody just assumed it would get straightened out, and then I guess that was Thursday or Friday. GFT and the governor and Tina Munoz Barnes are all up there at Adelup, and they're telling GovGuam employees that no, as a matter of fact, they're not going to get double pay. And well, I mean, you'd asked an earlier question about how this came about, and it came about when it was clear that the government was not acting in good faith. And a particular alarm was that opinion from the Attorney General's office. And I've said before, I'm confident I'm right on this. That opinion was agenda driven. They saw where they wanted to arrive in that opinion, and they went for it.
Explain what you mean by agenda-driven.
Well, they decided that, I'm sure they're going to cite all sorts of financial constraints and whatnot, but they decided that they didn't want to pay double pay for all these people, and that led to, I'm sure, a political dilemma, not to mention a legal dilemma. They decided, well, we don't want to pay this full amount. We're probably going to have to pay something, so let's compromise. I think that was Robert Koss's word. We're going to compromise, and the people who are going to pay the price are the folks that were out there risking their lives. So, yeah, that's what I mean by agenda-driven. This is what we want. Let's get there. Somebody write an opinion that supports it.
Were you surprised at all that the Attorney General's legal opinion appeared to? I mean, it could have been written by Adelup's legal counsel.
Could have been. Have no idea. I don't have any real insight on the origins inside the office. I doubt if the Attorney General himself, was hitting the typewriter keys, but he certainly is responsible for the opinion, and he subscribed. So it's on leaving.
In your press conference, you called the opinion lazy.
It is.
Can you kind of go into that a little bit more, Tom?
Sure. If you look at 8.406, there are 3 subsections, A, B, and C. And they looked at C and ignored A and B. And that brought them where they wanted to be, which was a pronouncement that, as to GMH, the hospital was open, so these people don't get double pay. It's a tremendously cynical thing to do, but that's what they did. They just focused on C and ignored A, and they ignored B. And if you look at A, as you know, that provision is crystal clear. If the governor declares an emergency, the government of Guam employees are placed on excused absence with pay, not charged to leave. And that's it. That's the entire thrust of Section A. And then from there, you move down through Section B, talking about the actual existence of the emergency in the governor's declaration, and then you get to C, which instructs us what to do with necessary agencies such as DOC and GPD. You get to that point, and if you're just going to look at C, you arrive at an erroneous, lazy opinion that says these folks are not getting paid.
Tom, one thing I could appreciate about your press conference was that there's been so much talk from the governor, from the AG about, this double pay, that's for typhoons. This is a pandemic. This is a different emergency. This is different. It's apples and oranges.
Meaning what? It's only an emergency when they decide it's an emergency? Julian Guerrero declared it to be an emergency. And there's nothing in the law says that this provision is limited to typhoons or earthquakes or anything of the sort. That is just false and classic cherry picking. They're not allowed to decide for themselves when the law is in effect.
Right, and I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, we've been tracking this from the beginning, and I think the comments from the governor, they've run the gamut from what was closed, what wasn't closed, and that whole Section C argument from the Attorney General. And I mean, it was clear they were kind of reading from the same notes. But she had also previously said that whatever the law, she just couldn't afford to pay it. So we kind of saw a lot of reasons. One of them was that they didn't believe that, they were legally obligated to pay it. And then the other was that whether or not they are legally obligated to pay it, they just can't afford it. So you see those inconsistencies there. I kind of felt like, well, pick an argument.
Yeah, they'd like to have both of them. I can't remember a time when the government of Guam wasn't saying they didn't have any money. I noticed yesterday, and I have to, I can't gainsay this GITA program, but they're going to be giving $20 million, I think, in grants to small businesses. Great, do that. But don't at the same time tell us that you can't afford to pay the people who have been putting it out there and protecting us all with some of that money. I noticed that GPA and GWA did the right thing. They followed the law. They paid their employees double. They didn't, try to pull any tricks on anybody by explaining that, it's not really an emergency, or, oh my goodness, your agency's actually open, so no get double pay. None of that sort of sleight of hand took place at those agencies.
That legalese, I call it legal jujitsu.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also understand that other agencies in typhoons and so forth have paid. Like, I think CPS has paid their workers. I mean, my goodness, those people are out 24/7. That they have, in the past, given double pay to their employees who've had to work through typhoons. This isn't a buffet. You're not allowed to just, pick up some pancit, not the other thing. You have to obey the law right across the board.
We had got the Attorney General's reaction to your lawsuit. I'm not sure if you heard it, but he said that, I believe in compensating frontliners for the added risk they take and sacrifices they make in serving on the front lines of emergency. However, my job as the chief legal officer is to provide legal opinions, not personal opinions, on what the rules are, not what the rules should be. Mm-hmm. Attorney Fisher has his own opinion of the Department of Administration rules and regs. We agree with Attorney Fisher. This case is about following the rules. Our opinion outlined the requirements of the double pay rule and acknowledge that, absent legislative action, unacceptable inequities would result. His clients have the right to make their case before the courts, and we are confident that the rule of law will prevail. What is your reaction to his reaction?
Well, it's hardly a full-throated defense of his opinion, that's for sure. My opinion is unchanged. I agree that the AGs have an obligation, I suppose, to render an opinion, but we hope that the Attorney General will be rendering an opinion that is in accordance with the law. They can't just pick one section of the law and ignore the rest of it. And that, it's really as simple as that. I don't think that, and this is, let's be honest, this is not a surprise. Carl Gutierrez promulgated these personnel rules and regulations, 27 years ago? And this has come up as a surprise all of a sudden?
Yeah.
There's been no change. What the change is, they don't want to do it.
Matter of fact, I did ask former governor about the double pay issue.
Yeah, we did.
Last week, and to ask his position on it. And what did he say, Chris?
Basically, the gist that we got was that he was uncomfortable to really discuss it because he just got in at GVB, and the governor has been very, very clear on where she stands on it. The governor sometimes tends to take things personally. So I felt like Carl didn't want to really. In fact, he said something like, "Yeah, I don't really know about that. I'm not following that issue," or so, which, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
He's a two-term governor. We know he knows what it is, but he just didn't want to come out and conflict the governor when he just got called onto the field after being benched for whatever reason for so long.
Well, okay, Governor Gutierrez, of course, has to speak for himself.
Right.
But, just the whole atmosphere where people are running for cover and, Bob Koss essentially abandoning his membership a few days ago, it's just dispiriting. It's dispiriting when, we've gone through 7 weeks of this COVID virus, and we've all been hearing about how we're in this together, and, we support our frontliners, so forth and so on, but when push comes to shove, we're just not going to give them what is theirs.
But we're going to give them differential pay.
That's not what the law awards them. The law awards them double pay. That, we have a promise with these people, and, the promise is essentially a contract. We said if you will work during this emergency, we will give you double pay. We didn't say if you work during this emergency, we'll give you a portion of your double pay. We didn't say if you work during this emergency, we'll talk later about how much we're going to pay you. These folks, again, they put it out. We've spoken about this before, but you've got a nurse, for example, at GMH who had to work a 12-hour shift, and she was in the COVID ward, or she was dealing with all sorts of people from all sorts of groups that come in, and then she's been dealing with them. She doesn't know if she contracted the virus. She did everything she could not to, but then she's got to go home. And when she goes home, she's got a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, but she doesn't feel comfortable giving them a hug because, God forbid she transmits the virus. That's the sort of risk these people are taking. We're not saying they're, that's the sort of risk these people are taking, and we promise to compensate them for it. So what's going on now? Why are we not following the law? Why are we not compensating these people?
Yeah, and I think it's, I don't know what happened over there at Adelup, but it just, to me, seems insulting that they thought government employees didn't know what they were due or something, because they kind of just didn't mention the double pay, and then they flopped out this COVID differential pay as almost a bait and switch.
Yeah. It is a bait and switch, and in a sense, I'm kind of reluctant to get into a discussion about the government's finances because, that nurse, that hypothetical nurse we were just talking about, she fulfilled her part of the bargain. It's not her job to cross the street and figure out, go through GovGuam's pockets and find every nickel and quarter. That's what we elected the governor to do. The governor decided, and she took an oath that she was going to enforce the laws of Guam. We expect her to do so. And they got to come up. They have to come up with the money. The argument of, oh my goodness, it's going to bankrupt the government of Guam and so forth and so on, does not garner much sympathy with me.
Yes, especially when we've discussed with FEMA and other authorities that this double pay is something that would be covered with either federal reimbursement from FEMA at a 75-25 clip, or, I mean, some people seem to think we can just use CARES funding outright to pay for the whole thing.
Well, perhaps that's true. I'm not sure that anybody's got an exact bead on what's going on with the federal dollars that are coming out and coming our way. But I would assume that the Congress of the United States is awarding that money so that we can pay these frontliners.
Right.
You know, you did kind of make an assessment of the bills that have since poured in since the AG's opinion. You have Speaker Tina Munoz Barnes' bill 359, to Lena Nelson, the Vice Speaker's 357, and now we have, and I'm not sure if you are aware of it, Senator Joe San Augustine's bill, I think 361, which would clarify that essentially an emergency is an emergency.
Right.
Is an emergency.
Sabrina, is Senator San Augustine, is his bill retroactive to the beginning of this emergency, or is this...
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not that familiar with the bill, but it's completely unnecessary. We've already got the law in place, but, you know, more power to him. If he is trying to get these people paid, you know, they don't want leave. They want money. They need the money. They have to pay rent. They've got mortgage payments to meet, credit card, so forth and so on. They don't want this vague promise of leave, which may or may not be granted going into the future. You know, they have no guarantee on that.
Right.
And in that bill, if you're going to make the application for one half of the hours you're entitled to, you'd better do it by October 1st. Otherwise, it's all going away.
Yeah, then we're talking about the Vice Speaker's bill with the capping at the 200.
The speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
right.
Speaker's bill. I'm sorry.
Tom, are you taking on any more clients asking for a friend?
Okay. We have had an avalanche of inquiry. Procedurally, what we are looking at today and next couple days are perhaps asking the court to certify a class in this case. If the court, will work on the definition of the class, but if the court decides to certify, then essentially, depending on the ruling, all GovGuam employees would be included in this suit. Unless they didn't want to be. If they wanted to opt out, they could certainly do that.
We had the Guam Federation of Teachers on earlier, and they mentioned that this route that you're taking, the petition for the writ of mandamus, might be sort of a hard sell because there are steps that should be taken first before we go to the court, like grievances that should be followed. Can you explain that? Or
I sure can. That is an unfortunate position, if that came from Mr. Koss. What he's saying is that each individual employee needs to file a grievance and go to the Civil Service Commission and then get placed on their docket, and we'll come back in 2022 and figure out what's going on. Unfortunately, that's what happens. Civil Service Commission. No, that's ridiculous. If you're going in for a writ, you have to explain to the court that you don't have a speedy remedy other than coming in and saying, "Judge, we need your help here." We don't have a speedy remedy, and nobody could sincerely say that we have a speedy remedy in this case. So it's kind of Guam Federation of Teachers, if they say they are going to represent a group of people, then they need to do it. They need to get out there. They need to make a move, not just sit back in the bushes and wait to see what happens and see if somebody will offer them a compromise that they think they can sell to their membership. I don't mean to sound so harsh and condemnatory, but
no, that wasn't harsh at all.
but it's a tremendous disappointment. And then I heard that Mr. Koss was, I don't know what he was doing. It sounds like he was attempting to recruit plaintiffs for a lawsuit that doesn't exist. It's just not clear what he's referring to. So I did hear that he said 400 or 500 people were coming into the office or whatever, signing a petition or signing up for a lawsuit. What is it they're signing up for? Did Mr. Koss explain that to them?
I thought they were signing up that they want to be a part of this lawsuit, that they're giving everybody till Friday to come in or
what
call.
lawsuit?
That they plan on filing, I guess, on Monday.
Have they? Well, typically,
I guess we got to go on and look at the form. There's a form that he's going to be sending us. It might even be, and I'm not sure if it's on their website, but
Well, talk about buying a pig in a poke. How can I sign up for something that doesn't exist yet? You know, if he's got a lawsuit out there in a draft form, circulate it, let people see it. It might be exactly what they want. But I guess he hasn't. It's not prepared to do so. It's just, you know, this is a minor quibble, I suppose. Here you got a bunch of I don't know, people arguing over procedural matters like this. The question is, are these people going to get paid, and when are they going to get paid?
Right. And so your way, obviously, you think is the most expedient way.
Another thing to recall is we are still in the emergency. And there are, on my way to work today, I saw 3 Guam Police Department cruisers go by. We're in an emergency. Those guys are forced to work. Most of the government of Guam is still home today and sheltering in place. Yet these guys are out there. They're suffering an injury right now. And imagine if you are having to do this, and then at the same time you're hearing your own government say that they're not going to pay you as they promised. It must be. And that's, you know, that's across the board. Department of Corrections, my goodness. Not enough has been said about those people. They are, you know, to the extent that there could be an incubator for COVID-19, I would think it would be the Department of Corrections. But, you know, all these folks right across the board. And how disappointing that must be for them, and demoralizing to, you know, be told to come in and work during the course of this emergency, but we're not going to pay you.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely not a good look for Adelup.
No, not a good look for Adelup, and it's not a good look for Guam. It's not a good look for all of us. You know, it's a representative democracy, and you know, this is not the way we should be treating each other. We can't. This is one of the things. Another disheartening event was Tina Rose Munya Barnes. She entitled her bill the Heroes Compensation Act or something like that. And, you know, the Heroes Compensation Act, what is their compensation? We're going to take money out of their pockets. I just thought that was a tremendously cynical thing to say or name that bill.
So, Attorney Fisher, what's next? You filed this petition in the Superior Court. What happens from here?
Well, it's as you know, it's a writ of mandamus, and the court can issue either a peremptory writ, in which they're saying, do it, case is over, or they can issue an alternate writ, in which they say, do it, and come back in 10 days and tell me you did it, or explain why you didn't do it. So to answer your question, Sabrina, we're waiting. It's been filed. Now we're just waiting to hear from the court what they intend to do about it. I have no idea where it is in the Superior Court. It's COVID related, and according to the court's own rules, they will hear it. But I have no information on, you know, if a judge has been assigned, or who that judge might be, or anything of that nature.
Are you concerned that you might run into some possible conflicts, say if a judge has a wife that works for the government that might, you know, benefit from double pay, or if the judiciary itself, I don't even know if double pay is applicable to that branch of government?
Well, that's always a concern. That is always a concern in the Superior Court. I've done cases that have every single judge in the Superior Court has recused themselves. I hope that doesn't happen. I guess, you know, yeah, it is a concern, but again, that is not plaintiff's burden. You know, we are entitled to justice, and they're just going to have to work it out.
Right. It sounds like a personal problem, in other words.
Exactly, precisely. You know, we did our job. You're not required to do your job for you. We have done our job. Give these men and women their money.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for your time, Attorney Fisher. And you know, I got your number. We'll keep you. We'll keep you in the loop, and hopefully you keep us in the loop. We'll get you on again when there's any development or any time you want to. I like your perspective. So anytime you want to come on and give the AG a hard time or whatever, I'll give you the special number.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wash your hands.
I will. You
Okay.
too. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll see you.
Sabrina. Bye,
Bye.
Chris.
I see you. All right. What?
You're funny.
I give the special number to the AG too.
Could you imagine though if there are these conflicts of interest and it just keeps being passed over and passed over?
Okay.
I mean, it could be a possibility.
You're right. I wonder, but I'm pretty sure there's got to be a judge down there who wants to be a hero or a villain.